Butter up, my fellow players. This video was made thinking about people unsatisfied with the standard D&D 5e turn order, or at least about the way it feels. It may be applicable to other contexts and games, but I'll focus on the 5th edition of Dungeons & Dragons. If you think your battles feel clunky, that turns are slow and you see players getting distracted way too many times, try following this video, and maybe the next one, to bring some spice back to your table. If you want to bear with me for a while, I'll explain how I came to my solution and the problems I wanted to address with it. Otherwise, you can as well skip, I won't judge you, to the solution or open the link I posted in the description. But keep in mind it may not make much sense if you didn't follow the reasoning behind it. Normally, if the players encounter a hostile unit and both parties are aware of it, an initiative check is called by the Dungeon Master. Everyone will roll for initiative, and most of the times, if DMs didn't prepare themselves enough, they'll have to start writing down all those numbers one by one. Sometimes they use Excel spreadsheets or an app haunted by lousy ads, or maybe even some of the latest RPG-related premium service out there, but writing down that info is always part of the process. And as humans, that waiting time is boring for us for a variety of reasons. And then there's the worst part, remembering whose turn it is. They all have their use and there's nothing inherently bad in using any of these systems. I still use them sometimes when I don't use the homebrew I'll be talking about. But all of them share two common denominators, as I said before. The first being data input and second being us, humans. This is why it most likely happens. Immersion was broken. And as the tension you built up until that moment shatters. And while the players emerge from the narration and hear talking numbers, most of their brains will start to feel boredom and in need of actively interacting with something. Most of them, worst case scenario, will likely take their phones out of their pockets, get to the toilet, call the guy from the apartment, take a breather, check the email spam filter, etc, etc. As of 2022, our attention spans are very short, and the results may be that one of the players may feel like they need a recap before acting because they forgot their turn. Even masters sometimes lose track of the turns, even having them under their noses. So, I didn't want to change the game completely, but I wanted to make battles more memorable and easy to grasp. I always played lots of tactic video games, and thinking about how the series of Fire Emblem and Valkyria Chronicles manage battles on a big scale, I came up with an idea. What if enemies and players acted as a single front and decided the turn order by themselves at every new round? In those games, characters often know each other and are used to fight alongside one another, not just by design, but by lore. While often in D&D the players start out as a bunch of random adventurers stringed together until they're bounded by blood or fate. And lore aside, often these games offer a more strategic way of thinking that I wasn't sure I wanted to add to my campaigns. I almost feared it would feel like chess or that would have it made too easy, and there was the possibility it would break the flow of the narrative, adding too much metagame into the room. I also didn't want to throw the standard system away, so I decided to work around it, give it purpose in a way. You may pause to read and it may seem like it is much, but it is actually way easier than you may expect. The basic thing is, this homebrew rule allows the players to add their initiative rolls one to each other, and the total is then divided by the number of characters that made an initiative roll to obtain an arithmetic average, and the same the DM can do for the enemies. The highest average starts the fight as a group, and the other creatures or parties will go based on their own initiative averages, but the master may use the foes in any order they want as well. To make it even simpler, you can establish before the battle the average initiative check for a given group as you would do with any other CD. and your player's average will just have to be higher than that to get the first turn, or party round as I called it. The prerequisites are the ones I use to enforce a logical reason why the characters may act in sync. Also, in some way, I believe it should feel like a talent for the players, something their characters earned, not a rule that is there just for the sake of simplifying the streamline of an encounter. And it's not even something given for every combat, since there are necessary conditions for it to happen. I wrote them as generic as possible to allow DMs to adapt it as they want to their own campaigns. I personally give this possibility as a free talent for the characters of a group that reaches level 4 together after some adventures. It's also interesting to note that different classes and races may bring new ways to communicate in a team, and in time they may be able to fight together even among greater distances. Even though you may still have to do work around some math before battle, just making it a big addiction and then dividing it isn't as hard as writing down the names and their representative initiatives of 7 people and 20 goblins enemies and ID numbers. Also, once the party's rounds have been set, there won't be ever confusion about whose round it is. I will advise not to split too much in parties unless you are trying to replicate the feel of the Hobbit's Battle 5 armies, or in today's words, a team battle royale. Most of the times your players will fight a bunch of creatures without leadership or common cause, so it's okay if sometimes the battle feels like players round and then the others round. Be also aware that you should design combats on the field in which it will take place, to create more interesting outcomes and possibilities, but also for balance. Putting the players against an army on an open field is definitely a no, for example, unless they did so consciously. Now, as I was saying before, these mechanics may not suit every table and taste. In my experience, they are universally accepted and work well, at least for battles on bigger scales. But for a standard encounter, it depends on you and your players, because there are some obvious cons you may need to figure out how to deal with. For example, it may penalize a rogue or a monk with a high initiative bonus, or, in your opinion, it may compel player characters to act too much friendly, or thinking too much strategically when they interact with each other, if that's something you think is bad or don't match with the feel you want to create in your setting. And we cannot ignore the fact that whoever starts the battle has an outrageous advantage. For these, you can interpret it this way. The rogues and monks are not wasting their bonuses, they're still adding it to the group initiative pool, and you can think of it as a character helping each other to get the upper hand. Eventually, even evil and silent characters should be more collaborative when the alternative is their demise. They do not have to talk friendly, maybe their characters just need their own axe to communicate efficiently by slamming it against the enemies that are healing the others. The advantage the first party has in battle seemed to me the biggest problem, but it can be solved by DMs designing good battles, with interesting environment that players may use, and ultimately, players and their luck. And when the group is against a small group of low-level enemies, it gives them that advantage that makes an easy battle feel like it, instead of just a big waste of time and spells. Cons aside, with this rule players won't get bored waiting for their turn. They are allowed during their round to communicate quickly in character and do some teamwork. Even though there may still come to some degree of metagame between the players, they will feel like a team, urging each other to action or seamlessly moving around the field of battle. Immersion won't be shattered to the ground, as the choices they are going to make will count as a group and not just for themselves. A little unpredictability also comes into place for both DMs and players, who will have to change their priorities based on what happened in their latest turn. Just like in the games I took the inspiration from, it can create a sense of urgency when it comes to positioning the character at the end of their turn. And that's because when the other party's round will happen, with no possibility for other members of the party to intervene out of the blue, they may end up dead, since they were out of position. And consequently, it makes the players more immersed, because there's never guessing whose turn it is, there's only actions to take and watch carefully, especially in front of smart enemies full of surprises. It lets the DM follow a more clear course of action during the enemy's turn. Even narrating the battle after it's ended will be way easier for all the participants. And when it can't be used for any given reasons, the players will most likely miss it, adding a little gravitas to your battle stories whenever you may go back to the standard system. It could be darkness, their telepathy not working, a curse that muffles every sound they say, the feeling of not being able to sync up their actions and having to fend for themselves may feel different now, even if the system is good old standard one. It's an illusion for sure, but all of our games are. Thank you for watching, and if you happen to use this rule at your table or a version of it, I would love to hear about your stories in the comment section. If you have any questions, I'll answer here, or you can follow me on Twitter, that's a thing. Butter out.